Hi guys, this is section 6.2, which is going to be slope-intercept form. Before we get into that, there are three types of linear equations, or three forms. So you can write linear equations, which means it's going to be a straight line when you graph it, three different ways. The first way is slope-intercept, which is what we're going to do today. Later on in the chapter, you're going to learn standard form, and then you're going to get point-slope form. Okay, just throwing these so you know that there's going to be three different types, and you'll be able to go back and forth from one form to the other. Okay, so today, slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So in the last section, I told you slope was also known as m. So there it is, y equals m, or slope, times x, and then plus b is your y-intercept. The y-intercept is where it's going to cross the y-axis. It's going to intercept the y-axis. So when you see m and you see b, you know that this means slope and y-intercept. Notice I put the sign in front of the b as well in green. So if you see a negative number there, your y-intercept is going to cross below the origin or at a negative number. Okay, so slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Identifying the slope and y-intercept, the m and the b. This is going to be a really simple section here. If you look at this equation, whatever number in front of the x is your m. So your slope is m here, is 4, and your b is going to be negative 6. So again, it takes both the sign and the number, and that is your slope and intercept. So in this one, pretty simple, negative 1/2 for your m, and your b is just going to be 5. You do not need to write plus 5. When you write 5, you assume it's positive. Okay. In this one, I wanted to show you a couple of different ones. If you have a negative x, there's an invisible 1 here. So you put negative 1. Okay. And then this one would be a negative 3. Okay. If you have a y equals x, again, there's an invisible 1 here because it's like saying 1x. So your slope is 1. But here's the tricky part. The b, if there's nothing here, that means it's like saying plus 0. So your b is 0, which is also the origin. So if you ever see an equation without a number after it, like just 3x, 4x, or whatever without a plus or minus after, that means your y-intercept is the origin. It goes through the origin. The other way to do this in this homework, they're going to give you the m and the b and tell you to write the equation. So it's a pretty simple one. You just go y is equal to, you put the m in front of the x, and then you put the b after, and it's a negative 1, so you put a minus 1. Okay, so really simply, just writing the equation if they give you the m and the b. That should be duck soup for guys. Duck soup is old school for easy. Okay, so here's, another section from the homework. Writing an equation from a graph. So if they give you the graph, you have. So I have some graphs up here, and you can see it. So this first one, you always want to write y equals blank x and then blank, and you're going to put the m in the front, or the slope in the front, and the y-intercept after. Okay, so if you remember the slope, we go rise over run. So from here we went up 1, 2, 3, 4. So we went up 4, and then we're going to the right 1, 2, 3. So plus 3. So rise over run for the slope is 4 over 3. And you can see it's a positive sloping line, so my slope should be positive, which is 4/3. And the only thing different from the last homework is now you're going to add in the b. My b is the y, where it crosses the y-intercept, and that's this right here. So it's minus 4. So my equation is y equals 4/3 x minus 4. Okay. So here's another equation here. I find my slope, use the rise over run, so I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So I went negative 4 because I went down 4. And I'm going to go over 2. So I'm going to go over 2. So negative 4 over 2. And I can just change that to a negative 2. Okay, you don't want to leave it over 1. You just put negative 2. And then my y-intercept, again, is this here where it crosses the y-axis. It's at negative 1, 2, 3, 4. It's at negative 4. So my equation is y equals negative 2x minus 4. Here's my third graph. So I'm going to put my slope, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and over 1. So I went negative 3, and I went over positive 1. So my slope is negative 3. And again, these are negative sloping lines, so my slope, or my m, should be negative, which it is. Okay. Then I look for my b, 1, 2, 3, and this is my b here. So it's plus 3, because it went up 3 from the origin. So my equation of y equals negative 3x plus 3. Okay. Homework check number 1. Here is your graph. Nice and big so you can see it. Please fill in this equation. Okay. Fill in this equation, and that's going to be your homework check number 1 for this graph here. Okay. So homework check number 1, write an equation for this graph here. Okay. The next one, graphing equation. So now we're going to go backwards. Instead of giving you the graph and writing an equation, they give you the equation and tell you to write the graph. When you start with the y-intercept and slope-intercept, start with the y-intercept. That's why I made it green for you guys, by the way, because that's where you're going to start. Okay, so you start with negative 1. When you graph it, you're just going to put a negative 1. Sorry, I'm going to leave it open circle because I don't want the green getting all black. And then now my slope is 2, but I can write this slope as 2 over 1. Rise over run. Okay, so when I go rise, run, if this is my rise and this is my run, I need to rise 2 and run 1 and go here. So I'm going to rise positive 2 and run positive 1. So up 2, right 1. Okay, and here's where it can get tricky. The 2 can be written as 2 over 1, but it can also be written as negative 2 over negative 1. Okay, that's still, when I divide it, still becomes positive 2. So I can actually go down 2 and over 1. And if you notice, my line is going to be a straight line, although it's kind of crooked because of this. And it's a positive sloping line because I have a 2x, which is a positive 2. Okay. If you didn't get that, we'll practice some more here. So again, I start with my y-intercept, which is positive 2, so I'm going to start here. Okay. And from that point, by the way, if you notice, I went from that point to do my slope, from the green dot. My slope is negative 1/2, which means if it's negative 1/2, that's my rise over run. My rise is a negative 1, my run is a positive 2. So my rise goes down 1 and right 2. And you can see I'm already going to have a negative sloping line, which is good because I have a negative slope. Then go back to the original point, and now if you remember on the last section, I said negative 1/2 can also be written as 1 over negative 2. It's the same thing. The negative can be on the top or the bottom. So now I can rise a positive 1 and run a negative 2. So I'm going to up 1 and over 2, and I'm going to go here. And you can see that I'm going to have a straight line that goes negative sloping. Okay, if you didn't get it, let's try it again. Negative 2/3 x. If you remember from right before, I put a plus 0, okay, and that means it goes through the origin. So my dot is going to be here on the origin. Okay, my slope, negative 2/3, can be written as negative 2 over 3. Okay, so I go down 2, because this is my rise, so I'm going to go down 2, and I'm going to run positive 3. Down 2, positive 3, and then I would go opposite. Up 2, 1, 2, and to the left 3. And when I have my line, it should go right through the origin and a nice straight negative sloping line. Okay. That one was 2 over negative 3 for that point. Okay, so that's how you graph it. Here's another one for just in case. My y-intercept is at negative 3, so I'm going to put a big green dot there. My slope, if you remember, there's nothing in front of the x, so if you want to write it, you can write it as a 1, which would be as a 1 over 1, or negative 1 over negative 1. Okay, so from there, I can actually go up 1 and over 1 and go this way, and go back to the green point and go down 1, which is negative 1, and left 1, which is negative 1. Okay, so for this graphing, if you notice, I went one to the left and one to the right from the y-intercept. I went from the y-intercept, I went that way and that way. As long as you can do that on the graph, I want you to do that. Go one to the left, one to the right. If it goes off of the graph, you could go up again. So from here, if I went up one over one and it got cut off, I could actually go up one and over one again and go that way. Okay, but I do want to see 3 dots on your homework. You should have the y-intercept, one to the left, one to the right, or if you went up and up again, that's fine. If you run out of the graph. If you notice, I always went to the right first. So I went up and right, or I went down and right. That'll help you as a hint as you're graphing, but you don't have to, but I would suggest that as a helpful hint. Here's something in the book that was kind of hard, so I wanted to show it to you guys. Find the m and b if you look at this. The first thing we need to do is put it into slope-intercept form. So you actually have to do some work here. So we need to put it into y equals mx plus b. So I need the y by itself. So if you notice, I have the 3y here. What I need to do is minus 4x from both sides to get rid of this, because I want the y by itself. So I got 3y is equal to negative 2x minus 12. Okay, now I want the y by itself, so I'm going to divide by 3. But if you watch carefully, I'm going to divide everything by 3. Okay, you can just divide the whole, mathematically you have to divide the whole side by 3. So you do this by 3. But some people get mixed up and they only end up dividing the first one by 3, like this, and the 12 gets dropped down. So that's why I tell students, just put it over all of them. I'm sorry, put it under both of them like this. So you can see I'm dividing everything by 3. Okay, this just becomes y is equal to negative 2/3 x. So I'm just sliding the x off. I'm leaving the negative 2/3. And this becomes minus 4. Okay. When I solve for m and b, my m is this. So m is equal to negative 2/3. And my b is this, which is equal to negative 4. So that's how you do it. You need to put it into slope-intercept form. You want to solve it for y so that you get into slope-intercept form. And now you can find your m and your b. Okay, so that's one of the problems from the homework that you do. Here's an easy one for your homework check. So here's homework check number 2. Find the m and b. Okay, put it into slope-intercept form first, and then tell me what the m and the b is. Okay, I hope this helps. Take care.